I was the voice they feared. Millions made exposing the corrupt, but my past caught up. It destroyed everything. Now I speak from the shadows. My name's Ryan Kessler, and back in 2018, I was a nobody in Austin, Texas, ranting into a shaky microphone in my cluttered garage about corrupt city council members skimming funds from public projects. I launched Unfiltered Truth, a podcast born from late-night frustration, digging into local scandals like kickbacks to shady contractors and a mayor's hidden property deals I uncovered after weeks sifting through dusty public records at the county office. I'd spend hours piecing it together, my voice rough and unpolished as I called out names like Crooked Carl with a smirk, declaring, "I don't care who you are, I'll expose you." My fist banging the table for emphasis. Downloads crept up to 10,000 in a month, listeners drawn to the raw, no-nonsense edge, and I felt the spark, my words starting to rattle cages in a city that needed shaking. My girlfriend, Mia, would bring me coffee during those late sessions, rolling her eyes at my obsessive rants, while my cousin Ethan, who crashed on my worn-out couch, helped edit the scratchy audio, laughing at my wild tangents. The growth took off in 2020 when the pandemic locked everyone inside, turning Unfiltered Truth into a go-to for people craving unvarnished talk amid the chaos. I dropped an episode exposing a senator's offshore accounts, another on a CEO's insider trading scheme I traced through leaked emails I got from a nervous source, and a bombshell about a tech giant's data breach that sent shockwaves through Silicon Valley. Each one racked up millions of views, my inbox flooding with tips from whistleblowers who trusted my grit, some even mailing me USB drives with evidence. Sponsors jumped on board, VPNs promising privacy, protein powders hyping strength, netting me $100,000 a month, a number that still feels like a dream I might wake from. I traded the garage for a penthouse in downtown Austin, all glass windows and sleek leather furniture, with a skyline view that made me feel like I'd conquered the concrete jungle. Mia quit her soul-crushing desk job at a call center, and we started throwing lavish parties with influencers, champagne bottles popping, my laugh bouncing off the walls as I soaked in the vibe, toasting to my newfound status. Ethan moved in full-time, managing a growing team of researchers who scoured data for me, and I'd boast to the crowd, "I fear no one," raising a glass as they cheered. My confidence soaring to new heights. By 2021, I was riding a wave I couldn't believe was mine. Unfiltered Truth hit 2 million subscribers, and I was invited to debate on CNN, my face plastered on billboards along I-35 with my catchphrase Unfiltered Truth in bold, commanding letters. I bought a Tesla, its sleek black finish turning heads, a vacation cabin in Colorado with a hot tub overlooking the snow-capped mountains, and flew first class to confront corrupt CEOs in their glass-walled boardrooms, staring them down with a smirk. My style was pure fire, you're a liar, and I've got the documents to prove it. I'd snarl into the mic, leaning forward with a glare that made even the toughest execs squirm in their seats. Mia loved the glitz, posing for Instagram, buy our penthouse hot tub and designer swimsuits, while Ethan hired a team of researchers to keep up with the flood of tips pouring in from every corner. I'd wake up to fan mail stacked on the counter, death threats scribbled on napkins slipped under my door, and $50,000 checks from sponsors. Feeling like I could take on the world with a single episode, life was a high I never wanted to end. A roller coaster of power and purpose that kept me buzzing day and night. The energy peaked in early 2022, my podcast a wildfire tearing through the media landscape, and I thrived in the heat of it all. Unfiltered Truth had become a cultural force, with episodes exposing a governor's slush fund that funded private jets, a pharmaceutical exec's price gouging scheme I pieced together from whistleblower tapes, and a police chief's cover-up of brutality cases I dug up from court filings. Each drop hit 5 million views, my inbox exploding with tips from nervous insiders, some meeting me in dark parking lots to hand over encrypted drives. I'd lean into the mic, my voice a mix of rage and triumphs, snarling, "You can't hide from me, I'll drag your secrets into the light," my fist pounding the desk as the energy surged. Sponsors poured in energy drinks, crypto platforms pushing my monthly earnings to $150,000, and I reveled in the chaos, my confidence a shield against the threats that rolled in daily. I lived like a king, my penthouse in downtown Austin. Hub of power and glamour, its glass walls reflecting the city lights as I hosted late-night parties with influencers, podcasters, and even a few celebrities who wanted a piece of my buzz. Champagne flowed from magnums, the clink of glasses mixing with my booming laugh, and I'd stand on the balcony, tequila in hand shouting, "I fear no one, not the suits or the suits behind them." The crowd below cheering like I was there. Champion, Mia, now my full-time +1. Dazzled in designer dresses, posing for selfies with A-listers, while Ethan managed a team of 6 researchers. Their laptops glowing as they hunted down the next big scoop. I bought a second Tesla, a matte black one for Mia, and upgraded the Colorado cabin with a sauna, flying up on weekends to ski and unwind. My live shows sold out arenas. And I'd pace the stage in Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio, roaring no. One silences me, the crowd's roar feeding my fire, my adrenaline pumping as I felt untouchable. The hype reached fever pitch by mid-2022, my face on magazine covers. My catchphrase unfiltered truth echoing in memes and talk shows. I debated corrupt CEOs on national TV, staring them down with a smirk, my words cutting like a blade. "You're a fraud, and I've got the proof in my pocket." Mia loved the jet-set life, dragging me to fashion weeks in New York. Why Ethan hired a PR guy to handle the flood of interview requests. I woke to stacks of fan mail, handwritten letters praising my guts, alongside death threats that made me chuckle, and $75,000 checks that funded more exposes. One night in Austin, a sold-out crowd of 10,000 chanted my name, and I stood center stage, sweat dripping, declaring, "This is my fight, and I'll win it," my voice carrying over the cheers. Ethan clapped from the wings, Mia blew me a kiss, and I felt like the voice of a generation. My drive unstoppable, my life a high-octane thrill I never wanted to fade. Asterisk, the sizzle turned sour in mid-2022, a crack forming in my empire that I refused to acknowledge until it split wide open with brutal force. A disgruntled source, someone I trusted with unedited tapes from late-night recording sessions, leaked my rants offhand insults about a rival podcaster I dismissed as a hack. A drunken slur that slipped out after a long night of whiskey and frustration, and a rambling rant about fake journalists that sounded unhinged even to me. It hit Twitter like a grenade, the clip looping with captions like "Ryan Kessler unmasked" and "the truth behind the truth," and sponsors bailed within hours, their emails cold, curt, and dripping with legal threats. I panicked, my hands trembling as I typed frantic apologies on my phone, my heart racing like I'd run a marathon through the Austin heat. Mia stood in the kitchen, her voice tight with worry as she clutched her coffee mug, begging, "Ryan, just lay low for a bit. Let this blow over." But I couldn't stop, my pride kicking in like a stubborn mule refusing to back down. I doubled down with a vengeance, recording a furious episode in a single take, my voice cracking as I shouted, "They can't cancel the truth. I won't let them bury me under their woke garbage." The anger poured out, my face flushed red in the dim light of my studio, sweat beading on my forehead as I glared into the camera. The backlash grew worse. Hate comments flooding my feeds with words like bigot, has-been, and disgrace, each one a punch to my gut. Ethan rushed into the room, his face pale and his hands fidgeting with his phone, warning, "This is spiraling out of control. You need to pause before it's too late." But I brushed him off, snarling, "I'm not backing down. They don't get to win." I tried to wrestle the narrative back, deleting old posts in a frantic blur, firing off tweets to call out critics with hashtags like #ISTN with truth, but every move fanned the flames. My subscriber count plummeting from millions to a measly few thousand. The energy that had fueled my rise turned into a wildfire I couldn't contain, my confidence cracking under the crushing weight of my own reckless words. The studio feeling more like a cage than a kingdom, the breaking point crashed down on a humid July night in 2022, during a live show in Houston that was supposed to be my triumphant return to form. I was sweating under the blazing stage lights, the crowd buzzing with anticipation, when a heckler near the front yelled, "What about your slur, Ryan, you hypocrite?" I lost it completely. Snapping back, "You're just jealous of my guts, you coward." My voice a guttural growl that echoed through the mic and silenced the room. The audience gasped, phones whipping out to record every second. The flash of cameras blinding me as the moment stretched into eternity. Backstage, my team exchanged nervous looks, their whispers barely audible over my pounding heart, and my agent called mid-panic, his tone flat and final. "We're done. Ryan, you're on your own now." I sat in the green room, staring at my reflection in a cracked mirror propped against a wall, my heart hammering as the reality hit with full force. My fight had turned into a freefall, my control slipping through my fingers like sand, leaving me exposed, alone, and staring at the ruins of the man I'd been. The fall gathered speed by late 2022, a slow, agonizing bleed that drained every drop of my old life, leaving me hollow and disoriented. The penthouse in downtown Austin, once a glittering symbol of my triumph with its glass walls reflecting the city lights, went into foreclosure first, the bank seizing it after months of missed payments, its empty rooms echoing with the silence of lost parties and laughter. The Tesla, that matte black beauty I'd flaunted on Instagram to flex my success, got repossessed next, towed away while I watched helplessly from the balcony. My hands clenched on the rusted railing, the engine's hum fading into the distance. The vacation cabin in Colorado, with its hot tub overlooking snow-capped mountains and a fireplace where we toasted to victories, sold for half its value to a developer who bulldozed it without a second thought. Each sale a gut punch that knocked the wind out of me and left me gasping for air. Mia packed her bags one gray afternoon, her suitcase rolling past me with a hollow thud as she muttered, "I'm done with this chaos, Ryan. I can't watch you sink any lower." Her voice breaking with frustration before she walked out, leaving her perfume as a fading taunt that lingered in the stale air like a cruel reminder. Ethan's silence cut deeper than I'd expected, his calls stopping after a heated argument where I accused him of abandoning me when I needed him most, his voice trembling with hurt as he hung up and left me shouting into a dead line. I moved to a cramped studio apartment in a rundown part of Austin, the walls stained with someone else's regrets and peeling paint, the air thick with the musty smell of mold that seeped into my clothes. My Mick, once my weapon of truth, sat silent on a wobbly folding table, gathering dust as creditors called daily, their voices a relentless drone demanding money I didn't have, their threats piling up like unpaid bills on the counter. The sponsorship checks stopped cold, my savings dwindled to a few $100s stashed in a dented coffee can hidden under the sink, and the parties, the power, the adulation all faded into a memory I couldn't escape, replaying in my head like a broken record. I'd sit by the grimy window, its cracked pane offering a distorted view of the city moving on without me, feeling every piece of my life wealth, love, respect slip away like water through my fingers, leaving me with nothing but the echoes of a voice I'd silenced myself, a shadow of the man I used to be. The loss deepened through 2023, a relentless unraveling that stripped me bare and left me raw. I sold my recording gear, the mixer with its scratched dials and headphones with frayed cords, fetching a pitiful $200 from a pawn shop where the clerk barely looked up, and my awards plaques for Best Investigative Podcast from Industry events went on eBay, the buyer mocking me in the comments with "Enjoy the fall, King," their laughter ringing in my ears. The studio became a prison, the creak of the floorboards my only companion in the night, and I'd stare at the water-stained ceiling, replaying the Houston meltdown, the viral clips looping in my mind like a punishment I couldn't escape. Mia's absence was a constant ache, her laughter from our penthouse days haunting me in quiet moments, the sound of her voice calling my name a ghost that wouldn't leave. Ethan's distance felt like a betrayal I couldn't forgive, his silence a wall I'd built with my own anger, and I'd dial his number only to hang up before it rang. I tried odd jobs to survive, delivering tacos on a wobbly bike through Austin's humid traffic, dodging cars while balancing orders, stacking shelves at a discount store where no one knew my name and the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, but the pay barely covered rent, my pride taking a beating with every shift, my hands rough again from manual labor. The world moved on, you podcasters rising with polished takes, my name a footnote in their success stories, a cautionary tale whispered in podcasting circles. I was left with a void where my purpose used to roar, a man adrift in a life that no longer recognized me. The weight of my losses pressing down like a physical force. Asterisk for 4 months in 2023, I sank into a personal hell, a suffocating void where time dragged and hope faded. I stopped recording, the mic sitting like a dead relic on my wobbly table, and barely left the cramped studio apartment, its stained walls closing in with every breath. I survived on instant noodles and stale bread scavenged from a discount bin, the taste a bitter reminder of how far I'd fallen, while the hum of the ancient fridge became my only soundtrack in the silence. The internet kept mocking me. Memes of my Houston rant and that slur looping endlessly on TikTok, each laugh a stab that made me flinch. I'd scroll through old episodes on my cracked phone, my bold voice from 2021 as strangers, and feel a deep, hollow ache that settled in my chest like a stone. The isolation gnawed at me. Mia's departure leaving a void that echoed with her absence, her perfume a faint memory that haunted the air. Ethan's distance cut deeper, his silence after our fight a wound I couldn't heal, and I'd stare at his unanswered texts, my thumb hovering over the call button before dropping the phone. I tried to work odd jobs to keep going, delivering tacos on a wobbly bike through Austin's humid streets, the heat sticking to my skin. Stacking shelves at a discount store where the fluorescent lights buzzed and coworkers whispered about the fallen podcaster, but the pay barely covered rent, my pride crumbling with every shift. My mind was a fog of regret, replaying every rant, every mistake. The weight of my full pressing down until I could barely move. Life felt empty, a gray stretch where my purpose used to burn, and I'd lie awake, the darkness my only companion, wondering if I'd ever climb out. One night in May, the loneliness hit a breaking point. Drunk on cheap beer from a dented can, I smashed a glass against the wall, the shards scattering across the floor like my shattered career, the crash echoing in the tiny space. The neighbors banged on the thin door, their muffled shouts piercing the haze, but I didn't care, sinking to my knees among the mess, tears mixing with the spilled beer. I stayed there, the glass cutting into my palms, the pain a distraction from the shame that consumed me. Those months were a wasteland, a place where I existed but didn't live. My identity tied to a voice that no longer spoke, my spirit trapped in a cage of my own making. Asterisk the realization crept in slowly one humid night in June 2023, a quiet truth that pierced through the fog of my despair as I sat among the glass shards on my studio floor. I'd spent years exposing others' flaws, greed in a governor's slush fund, lies in a CEO's boardroom, but never turned that lens on myself, never faced my own arrogance that had fueled my downfall. Mia had warned me to slow down, her voice pleading during those late-night arguments, and Ethan had begged me to listen, his calls filled with worry. Yet I'd ignored them both, chasing my ego like a drug. I stared at my reflection in a cracked mirror propped against the wall, the man looking back a stranger with sunken eyes, and it hit me my biggest expose should have been my own pride. My refusal to admit I was wrong, the weight of that truth, sank in deep, a burden heavier than the foreclosure notices or the repossession orders. Mia's absence stung sharper now, her departure a mirror to my stubbornness, her perfume a ghost that lingered to remind me of what I'd lost. Ethan's silence screamed louder, his distance a consequence of my anger, and I replayed our last fight, his trembling voice hanging up on me, wishing I could take it back. I sat there, the air thick with mold and regret, realizing I'd been a hypocrite, pointing fingers while blind to my own cracks. My need to be the loudest, the bravest, had crashed me harder than any scandal I'd uncovered. It wasn't a sudden epiphany that healed me, but it cracked open a space inside, a need to start over, not as the brash podcaster, but as someone who could finally see his own flaws. That night marked a shift, a quiet turning point I didn't fully grasp yet. I swept up the glass, my hands stinging from tiny cuts, and sat at the wobbly table, staring at the silent mic as if it held answers. The shame didn't lift, but the realization forced me to face it, to feel the full force of my mistakes, ignoring Mia's pleas, pushing Ethan away, betting everything on a voice that turned against me. It wasn't about redemption yet, just a raw acknowledgement that I'd failed myself as much as I'd failed them. The city hummed outside, indifferent to my struggle, and I leaned back, the cracked mirror reflecting a man beginning to understand, ready to find a path forward, however uncertain it might be. In late 2023, I took a shaky step towards something new, borrowing a friend's battered laptop with a flickering screen and setting it on my wobbly table. Determined to reclaim a piece of myself that felt lost in the wreckage, I started Whispers in the Dark, not as a loud comeback to reclaim my throne or silence the doubters, but as a quiet space to speak my truth. Recording in a soft voice that felt foreign and fragile after years of shouting into the void, I talked about my fall, my mistakes, ignoring me as desperate warnings during those late-night fights. Pushing Ethan away with harsh words I couldn't take back, sharing stories without pointing fingers. My words raw, unpolished, and trembling with honesty. The first episode got to 100 downloads, then 500 over a week, listeners drawn to the vulnerability, and I kept it anonymous, no name, no face. Letting the content stand alone like a confession in the dark, Ethan texted, asking if I was back in the game, his message laced with hope, but I stayed vague, not ready to pull him into my messy rebirth, while Mia's silence remained a closed door I didn't dare reopen. Her absence a shadow that still lingered. This was my way to live, to be real, not to chase the fleeting fame that had burned me, but to find a truth I could carry, a fragile thread to hold onto. The podcast grew steadily by early 2024. Whispers in the Dark hitting 10,000 downloads, then creeping up to 30,000 over months, a slow burn that surprised me with its quiet strength. I recorded from my cramped San Antonio apartment, the mic my lifeline in a sea of uncertainty, the city quiet outside as I spoke in gentle confessions about loss, learning, and the weight of pride that had crushed me. I'd sit in the dim light of a single bulb, the hum of a rickety fan my only company, crafting episodes about the sting of regret, the loneliness of failure, each one a piece of my healing, a stitch in the fabric of my broken spirit. Ethan visited once, his eyes searching mine over a cup of bitter coffee at a rundown diner, his questions hanging unspoken, but I didn't confess. Letting him wonder about the voice behind the podcast, while Mia's unanswered text from months ago stayed buried in my phone, a digital tombstone I couldn't face. The industry had forgotten me, my old life a faded echo swallowed by time, but I found a strange peace in the shadows, a way to keep going without the spotlight's blinding glare. A rhythm that soothed my restless soul. One rainy afternoon in March 2024, I uploaded an episode after hours of editing, sat by the streaked window where rain traced patterns like tears, and felt a calm settle over me like a soft blanket woven from quiet moments. The apartment was small, the table scratched and uneven, with a leg propped by a book, but it was mine, a sanctuary where I could breathe without the weight of expectations. I wasn't saved, not rich or famous again. The losses money drained to nothing. Mia's love slipped away. My old self buried under rubble still raw and aching. But I'd found a voice, a quiet one, without a name to tether it to my past. The rain tapped against the glass, a gentle rhythm that matched my heartbeat. The city blurred beyond into a watercolor of lights, and I leaned back in a creaking chair, ready to record again. Letting that voice guide me forward, step by quiet step, toward a life I could finally live with. I thought of Ethan's visit, Mia's silence, and the podcast's slow rise, each a thread in this new tapestry, not a triumph but a survival, a way to exist beyond the man I'd been. Asterisk, the final stretch began in mid-2024, a quiet evolution that unfolded as I settled into my small San Antonio life, the rhythm of Whispers in the Dark becoming my anchor in a world that had moved on. I recorded late at night, the city's hum a distant lullaby, my voice a soft murmur that carried stories of loss, regret, and the slow process of understanding myself. The podcast had grown to 50,000 downloads, a steady trickle that felt like a miracle. Listeners leaving comments about how my words resonated, how they too had stumbled and risen. I stayed anonymous, no name attached, no face to flash, letting the episodes stand as raw confessions, each one a step away from the brash Ryan Kessler who once roared on stages. Ethan's texts grew warmer, asking about my new project, with a hint of pride, but I kept it vague, protecting this fragile space, while Mia's silence remained a closed chapter. Her memory a gentle ache I'd learned to carry. I found a routine that grounded me, waking to the sound of traffic, brewing weak coffee in a chipped mug, and sitting at my scratch table to write. The apartment, with its peeling paint and a window that rattled in the wind became a haven where I could breathe without the pressure of fame. I'd walk to a nearby park, the Texas sun warming my face, and think about the exposes that once defined me, the power that turned to dust, realizing they were hollow without the honesty I'd lacked. Ethan visited again in June, bringing tacos from our old Austin spot, his eyes searching mine over the meal, and I almost told him, but held back, letting him enjoy the moment. Mia's text stayed in red. A digital ghost I couldn't bring myself to delete, her departure a lesson etched into my bones. The industry forgot me, my billboards replaced by newer faces, but I felt no envy, only a quiet acceptance of where I stood. One stormy evening in August 2024. I uploaded an episode after hours of refining it, the rain pounding against the window, like a drumbeat to my thoughts. I sat in the dim light, the room lit by a single lamp, and felt a peace settle over me, not the wild joy of my rise, but a steady calm born from surviving. The apartment was modest, the table propped with a worn book, the mic a humble tool, but it was mine, a space where I'd rebuilt something real. I wasn't saved in the dramatic sense, no riches returned, no fame reclaimed, the losses remained, money gone, Neil lost, my old self a memory I'd let fade. Yet I'd found a voice. A quiet one without a name, a presence that lived in the shadows, speaking truths that didn't need applause. The storm raged outside, lightning flashing, the city a blur beyond the glass, and I leaned back, ready to record again, letting that voice guide me forward, step by step, toward a life where I could exist without the weight of who I'd been. I thought of Ethan's smile, Mia's lessons, the podcast's quiet rise, each a thread in this tapestry of survival, not a victory march, but a gentle walk into a future where my story could breathe free.